What separates a good player from a bad player? Is it their aim? Is it their movement? Is it their game sense? While it's true all these things can separate people in terms of skill, one of the biggest things between good and bad players is the amount of bad habits that they have in game. A good player has little to no bad habits, and when they do have a bad habit, they identify it quickly and take steps to correct it. Whereas a bad player has many bad habits and doesn't even realize it, leading them to think that they're just bad. But in reality, if they correct these mistakes, they will instantly improve and climb the ranks in Valorant. What's going on, gamers? It's Animalistic here, and today I'm going to be going over 5 bad habits you're probably making that are keeping you hard stuck and how to quickly correct them. Some of these you may not have heard before, so I'd highly suggest you stay around for the whole video if you want to finally climb out of the rank you're stuck in. With that being said, let's get right into it. One of the biggest mistakes lower elo players make is not playing numbers. So what does this mean, you may be asking? Playing numbers is knowing when to push and when not to, depending on how many teammates you have alive in relation to how many enemies are still on the map. For example, if you get spiked down and your team has 2 players alive while the enemy team has 4, you should try and make an aggressive push to catch somebody off guard and secure a 1v1. The reason for this is if you play on site together and the enemy team pushes on, they can just trade each other out 1 for 1 and will inevitably win the round due to the fact that they just have more numbers. And in reverse, if you get the spike down and you have 4 teammates alive and the enemy team has 2, do not push aggressively and look for a fight. Stay back and group up, and at the very least, at least buddy up and have at least 2 of you together. That way, if an enemy swings you, your teammate should be able to trade you out. Remember, sometimes this won't work if your teammate's a donkey and misses a shot, but most of the time it will. Learning to play numbers correctly will secure a lot more easy rounds for you and will help you win a lot of rounds you thought were unwinnable. Once you learn this, be vocal with your team. Sometimes they may not know it and do the complete opposite. Call it out, and if you're low on numbers, make sure your teammate knows that you're going for an aggressive push to get a pick. And if you have numbers, call for your team to play time and play together. That way you don't give away any free 1v1s. Another huge bad habit I see people on lower elos make is walking around with a floating crosshair. And no, I don't just mean with your crosshair too low to the ground. I mean a literal floating crosshair. And I only say this because I used to be guilty of this too when I first started playing the game. For some reason, it's almost like I felt I could see better if it wasn't in the middle of my screen. But that is one of the worst habits that you could possibly have. Instead, make sure that you're holding your crosshair steady and tracking places that an enemy could either be holding or peek out of. Start clearing angles instead of just aimlessly walking around the map. This is a habit you have to break if you want to improve at Valorant. And it is very easy to do if you acknowledge that you're doing it, stay mindful of it, and work on it over time. But quickly, before I give you the last bad 3 habits that you need to break in order to rank up, what bad habits do you have right now and what could you do to correct them? Let me know in the comments down below. Have you ever been going to push onto a site and a smoke goes down and then all of a sudden your entire team sits there like a goddamn deer in headlights, and then you finally decide to push through and get absolutely mowed down by the enemy team? Yeah, I bet you have, and that leads me to my 3rd bad habit you need to break. That is learning when to execute and when not to. If the enemy team throws down a smoke and you don't instantly execute through it with your duelist and overwhelm the defender that's on site, you have waited too long and you're much better off backing up and at the very least cutting noise and waiting for the smoke to go down. Because if you wait too long, give the enemy team enough time to rotate and set up. And by the time you actually push through the smoke, they'll be ready for you and they'll just pick you off easier. Not to mention, you'll probably be very flustered walking onto the site. You're going to end up whiffing all your shots if you even manage to get any off. If you find yourself sitting outside of a smoke and hesitating to execute, call for your team to reset and come up with a new plan. Don't just stand around and then push through late. There's a couple things you can do. You can try to rotate and push a different site, and when you do this, leave somebody behind or have somebody lurk up through mid to try to catch somebody rotating. Or you can cut noise and send somebody to fake the other site. Then, when your teammate pulls the rotate and you hear the enemies leaving, you can re-hit the site that you were originally at. There are tons of different options that you could try, but do not push through the smokes blind and late. This is almost always going to guarantee that you lose the round. Now, we all know that economy is very important in Valorant. Knowing when to buy and when to save is huge. However, something you might not be doing is paying attention to the enemy's economy, which is bad habit number 4 that you need to break. Let's say, for example, the enemy team has a jet or a chamber. You need to be paying attention to when they have enough money to buy an op. Because if you don't, you may just swing an angle and get absolutely destroyed by it, and then for some reason get angry that they were using an op. No, the op wasn't the problem. You walking into it like a chimp was the problem. However, if you're expecting it and you're ready for it, you can bait a shot, use your util, or play around it, giving you a much higher chance of winning the round. Also, pay attention to when the enemy team is on a low buy. This may indicate that they are ratting with shotguns or playing completely different. Knowing this, you can play around it it and have a lot better chance of not losing an eco round and switching the momentum of the game. And also, for God's sake, pay attention to the enemy's ult economy. If an enemy team has a breach ult, a killjoy ult, or anything like that, don't just sit on site after planning, as you know they can just use their ult to flush you out. This goes for any ult in the game and how it can be used to swing the favor of the round. Be aware of the ults that the enemy team has before the round starts. That way you can plan ahead for it. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And the fifth bad habit holding you back from ranking up is not having the proper warm-up routine. A lot of you play 1 or 2 death matches and then jump straight into your comp games and wonder why you're so inconsistent and missing shots. Valorant isn't Call of Duty or Halo. You can't just jump into a game and use it to warm up. Make sure that you have a consistent warm-up routine you follow and do it every time before you play, because consistency breeds consistency. I actually have a really good warm-up routine that I made. I'll leave the link somewhere on the screen and in the description below. I would suggest that you go try it out. It's guaranteed to help with your consistency in game and has a couple tips you probably never heard before. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got any value out of this video or you want to see videos like this in the future, consider hitting that sub button and ringing that bell notification so that you can stay ahead of every other gamer and unlock your full potential. Much love, guys. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one.